the de facto chair at this point. The meeting of the Finance Committee for March 7th, 2013, 2 p.m. And I will call the roll call. Is that okay? I'm here. Jerry Carlson.
Here.
Craig Conlon is excused. Alan Enthoven.
Here.
Jim Massey.
Here.
Diane Bayer-Sindhu. Here. And Bob Polito.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. This is just want to welcome everyone. This is the first Finance Committee meeting of the newly with newly appointed council members. Vice Mayor Carlson is now an appointed council member for this committee. I am a appointed member, and then our alternate city manager. Would you help me with if you can remember? I think it's Mr. Widmer is the alternate.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so as well.
So we'll open it up for public comments. I see we have two members of the public. Any comments that you'd like to make today?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. You'll comment on the items on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So we'll move on to our regular agenda. And it's to approve the minutes of the December 12th, 2012 Finance Committee meeting. Does any member of the committee have any comments about the minutes of the December 12th meeting? Seeing none, I have a couple of just in so far as there's, I think that I would like to see the minutes presented in a more standard format. I know that our finance director is keeping the minutes, and while they're detailed enough and they do summarize, I think our city clerk has more of a standard format for committee meeting minutes, and maybe if you could talk to her about reformatting them. And then is the date correct up there, Robert? 12/11, or is it 12/12/12?
I think it was 12/11. Was it Tuesday?
Well, I don't know. So there's just differences from the agenda and from what's on here. So
Are these getting
yes,
posted?
it's the 11th, but it says the 12th on here.
Okay,
Yes.
and they do get posted on the website,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? I haven't checked the website to make sure that they are posted.
Okay.
I just in summary, are we, well, I guess it talks in item number 6 that we are going to be having a joint meeting with Finance Committee and the City Council. And I just maybe ask City Manager when we might be scheduling that.
That was supposed to be
This one?
January, February timeframe, but we kind of moved things along. We worked to get Nicolay Consulting here, and the actual meeting is planned with the other consultant. Was that?
We're trying to get the one with the coppers.
Yeah, that's the one.
With the calipers?
Yes.
That's the purpose of the joint meeting.
Yeah, the joint meeting for the retirement.
Okay. So it's been difficult to schedule meetings with everyone. Okay, so I have no more comments. Can I get a motion to approve these minutes? We have a motion from Mr. Enthoven. May I get a second? Mr. Massey, have a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Abstained, I was not. Right.
We have 2 abstained. I think Diane was here. So we have 2 abstained. So do we have a quorum approving them? 1, 2, 3. We have 4 of us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a 50%. So how does that work?
Who abstained? It was Mr. Carlson?
Mr. Carlson and
Me.
Bob Polito.
But if you reviewed the minutes, even though you weren't present at the meeting, and you're a member of the body now, you can technically vote on them as passing them as consent.
Effectively, that's what I did in the second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So even the 2 abstentions because you weren't here.
Okay, so vote.
Yes,
Yeah.
Also abstained.
Well, we could We could continue the approval of the minutes.
Is that,
to-
is he gonna take one more vote to get?
I think so,
Okay,
yes.
all right, whatever the proper language is to consent without being here.
Yes, we will consent of the review of the minutes. Okay, so we do have the minutes approved under those terms. We'll go on to item number 4, the selection of chair and vice chair of the Finance Committee. Since we are kind of a newly reconstituted group here, I think that we need to elect a chair and a vice chair. And I just want to say that as a council member, in my position, I would prefer to have a member of the committee, a member of our public, be the chair or the vice chair. I know Councilmember Carlson, Vice Mayor Carlson had been chair of the Finance Committee at one time when he was mayor, and that's fine with me too. But so I'd like to open up the floor for any nominations, and if I don't see any, I have a couple.
I'm not going to make a nomination, but I will make an information comment that Greg Conlon has been calling me the other day, had indicated an interest, but was open up to residents.
Okay,
Be interested in being
to
chair.
be chair.
I would agree as a CPA, strong background, nominating for chair.
Okay, we have a nomination on the floor from committee member Nancy to nominate Greg Conlon. I will offer a second of that nomination for chair.
I will. I'll second it.
Bob? Okay. Any discussion?
Well, I'd like to nominate the mayor.
I'm going to decline. I'd like to, so for, if we just look at the chair position, I think that, let's take a vote on that, and then we'll go to vice chair. Okay? All in favor for having Greg be chair of this committee? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll have Greg be chair. And open up the floor for vice chair. I'd like to nominate our vice mayor to be vice chair.
I will decline. I'd like to nominate Diane.
Okay.
I
So,
would second that.
I'm going to second that. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. So we have a new chair and a new vice chair. So Diane, since you are now the vice chair and our chair is not here, would you like to continue running the meeting at this point?
I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Do you want to take it up next time?
I'll take it up next time.
Is the committee fine with that?
Yes.
Okay, fine, all right, okay, so let's go forward. Item number 5 is the review of Nicolay Consulting, final actuarial and new assumptions. I must say, the information that they gave us really was detailed, and there's lots of explanations that I'd love to hear. So, Robert, would you like to present?
Yes. Good evening, members of the public and the committee. I'd like to introduce Doug Tugrud. He's actuarial consultant for our OPEB, which stands for our Other Post-Employment Benefits Actuarials, which has to do with our health retirement benefits. And they did our actuarial for the fiscal year ending 2011. And we had having him come here to do an explanation on the final report and also on some assumptions on some changes in discount rates. So further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Tucker.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you all for inviting me. I was here 3 years ago last, and I recognized a face or two, I think. I can't remember names that well, but so this was our second actuarial evaluation. I work for Nicolay Consulting Group up in San Francisco, and I've worked there for the last 7 years. I am the practice leader for our healthcare consulting, and probably the biggest part of what we do is do valuations for municipalities that have retiree medical programs. We have about 100 clients, and I have about 30 of those are mine. So why don't I just kind of dive right in? I'm not planning to take a whole lot of time. I'm hoping to leave some time for questions, so I'm not going to go through in great detail the whole report, I don't think. But the main purpose of what we do is to help you comply with an accounting standard that was issued about 5 years ago called GASB 45. Prior to 5 years ago, very few municipalities really worried about their retiree medical programs. But they didn't have very many retirees. You're kind of an exception to that. But there just wasn't a lot of concern about it. And the accounting profession finally decided they had to do something so that municipalities would start to recognize that there's going to be a liability out there, and it could be a pretty big liability. So about 10 years after they developed a similar set of rules for pension plans, they finally implemented similar rules for retiree medical plans, what we're going to be talking about. And basically the rules were that if a municipality does not contribute a certain recommended amount that was developed as part of the standards, that's fine. But you have to put that on your balance sheet now. It's a liability if whatever you don't contribute into a trust of that amount. And as of now, probably at least half of our clients haven't contributed a dime yet to a trust, which is fine. The accountants don't care. You can either...
How many would that be, half of your clients? 10?
Half of my clients would be about 15. I think about half of my clients roughly are contributing money, which we understand you folks are about to do, which is a good thing. But a lot of them just don't have money.
Well, I have a question already.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ask them as
Can
we go.
we be interactive?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I don't really
I
have
think
any.
that would be good.
Yeah,
That would be
absolutely.
just kind of
Absolutely.
So this was prepared back in 2011, and we did not make a contribution then, as suggested in the report, or in 2012. We've made no contribution.
Right, but my understanding is you are just about ready to make a sizable contribution, which has already been calculated, which is going to play some catch-up football for that, so.
And this has been done as of 2011, but it has just been completed, right?
Just recently completed.
Just recently updated
Right.
as of end of fiscal year 2011.
Right.
So this isn't, it's old data, but it's new.
Right, and we do have some information now on the your newer census data.
Good.
And I think the plan is to do a newer evaluation as of July 1/12, which will reflect a certain amount of downsizing.
Okay. So this does not reflect the downsizing?
No, this is not.
It has an assumption that that was coming up,
Oh.
the downsizing.
Oh.
But all this data was done in 2011, right? Everything that we've been given.
Yeah, actually the work was done in 2012, but it's based on the July 1/11
Right.
population data.
The refresh that you're talking about,
Uh-huh.
Mayor, is coming April timeframe.
Oh, okay. That's the one I want to see.
Right, that's when everyone wants to see
I'm
it.
not-
We're not there yet. We're getting
Right,
there.
right.
Right.
The effect of downsizing on PERS was with fewer junior employees, the costs went up. Is that what you're referring to? When you say the effect of downsizing?
That gets into kind of a complicated, different area than, although Robert asked me to review the CalPERS pension reports. And I've reviewed the last 2 years' worth of both the safety plan and the miscellaneous employee plan. And I'm hoping we have a little time to talk about that today. Robert thought that there might be some questions that I could address. Before I got into this business, I was a pension actuary for about 25 plus years. And this is kind of fun because it's new stuff. But so even though I do not have specific experience with the CalPERS pension, my experience back in the pension era was private sector. Hewlett-Packard being my biggest client, just for an example then. But I told Robert a pension plan's a pension plan. Most of the stuff about the CalPERS pension plan I've dealt with before. just in the private sector. So I think I understand their reports reasonably well, and if we have a little bit of time, I might be able to hit on a couple of questions.
But perhaps to answer Mr. Tobin's question, the downsizing is related to building and public works department, elimination of those departments in 2010. That's the downsizing that we're talking about.
11.
Oh,
Wait, right, which took place, I think the fall of 11, which was the 11-12 year,
Okay.
fiscal year. Yeah.
But our new report will reflect that downsizing, and that will have some reduction in
So
the
for a
costs.
fact, we're not, as Bob was pointing out, we're not looking at current data, we're
Right.
looking at history for whatever reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of misunderstanding because I thought this included the downsizing, this is the refresh. So the objective in looking at this data, because it's going to change, our actuarial will change pretty significantly, and I think it will change our liabilities, which is what we're hoping to.
If it doesn't change, we'll have to fire him.
That's fair. I guarantee you it'll change. I guarantee you it'll change. At least by a couple dollars.
Yeah, okay, so.
But no, then, you know, if, that's a good point. I mean, we're already getting started on the new valuation.
Okay, well, that's good.
And so we might not want to spend a lot of time on these numbers because we're going to be soon looking at updated numbers.
And so, let me just say, if we look on page 2,
Yeah,
okay, and we've got active employees, retirees, and surviving spouses in a total. We've got present value attributable to past service and present value attributable to future service, and then there's the total. You look down at the bottom line, $9,337,642. That's our liability as of July 1st, 2011.
actually, that's a bigger number than your liability. Your liability, I would say, is the left-hand bottom number, the $7.6 million.
Okay,
The $9.3 million includes benefits that have not been earned yet.
okay.
These are benefits that we think will ultimately be earned by your current workforce that stay around long enough to get retirement benefits.
And that assumes, because these are health benefits,
Right.
that assumes that every active employee currently working for the town of Atherton that is eligible for retiree medical works long enough for the town of Atherton and retires from the town of Atherton and CalPERS concurrently.
That's right.
Using the plan that we had in place in 2011.
If you're
Right.
using the demographics from before the downside as a future projection assumption, that would totally skew this whole.
Yeah.
The new numbers aren't going to change as much as you might think. Some of the people that were downsized were young and don't have much cost associated with them. For example, the numbers always go up every year unless you change the discount rate.
Well, we've got
so-
3 different scenarios of discount rates.
Right, and I did that specially, and we're going to do that again, I think, in the new report. Robert and I have been discussing other information that we're going to probably put in the new report that I think reflects some of the questions that have been coming from you folks. So we're going to customize it a little bit more.
Is CalPERS suggesting the 6% still a valid number?
6% is for the investment strategy that I understand from talking with PARS, your trustee. The 6% is about right in there, right, probably the median of other clients I have that are invested like you are. Some people think that's too high.
So they're using 6% for health, but 7% for pensions?
You don't have anything to say about the
No, I know
pension
that,
discount
but
rate.
they're using different discount rates?
CalPERS, it's CalPERS on the pension, and PARS is
Oh,
your.
ours, okay.
And it's your call on this plan. What, you can use whatever reasonable discount rate you want. You don't have any flexibility with CalPERS, it's 7.5%.
All right.
Mr. Tobin, did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to kind of comment on, this is not an objection to the report, I mean, I think you came out of a reasonable place. But the future of health expenditures now is, just the other committee members ought to be aware of this, is extremely uncertain. For 50 years, up to 2005, health expenditures grew at the rate of growth of GDP plus 2.5%. And so we've seen a steadily increasing percent of GDP.
Right.
Starting at about 2005, at least one, according to one analysis I studied, the growth has slowed down to about the same as potential GDP, that is what GDP would be doing if it was growing at full employment. And nobody knows why. I'm one of those people who doesn't know why. I mean, I'm in health economics.
I don't know why either.
And it's not, for a while people say, oh, it's the recession, so people don't want to go to the doctor, don't want to pay the co-pays, or don't want to take off work. It's not that, it's not Obamacare. Nobody thinks that Obamacare is doing anything to reduce that. I think your assumptions on page 9 seem reasonable, partly because, as people have been saying for some time, we can't let it go on this way much longer.
Right.
And there are a lot of signs around that the brakes are grabbing one way or another. The sequester has cut 2% off the doctor fees and hospital payments. It's kind of a signal to the doctor, hospital, medical industrial complex that brakes are going to grab or we've gone about as far as we can go. So I don't have any better assumption to offer, but I do think we should think of this as a pretty uncertain proposition, as I'm sure you would agree.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's a pretty wide range of, we're kind of in the middle of the pack as far as actuaries go. I think the assumptions we're using, we did not change our assumptions at all after Obamacare. We think it's equally likely it's going to make things go up more, or it could, something's going to change, you know, but who knows what direction it's going to go.
Yeah.
So we kept our same assumptions. We've had these assumptions for about 4 years. We updated our assumptions about 4 years ago to basically say we think it's going to take longer in the future to get down to any kind of a stable level. We used to assume it would happen in 5 years, we'd get down to a kind of a status quo. It's going to permanently be higher than inflation. But the assumptions you said at the beginning are about what we're using, in fact.
Yeah.
So that probably is why these look reasonable to you, because we are using about the same thing that you initially said.
Excuse me. If you're going to refresh the information anyways, you already
Yeah.
have this prepared and ready, can you give an analysis for the rate to be between 4.3 and 4.5% instead of 6%? I think
For the
that-
ultimate
yeah,
inflation,
I believe I've
medical.
seen that on a couple of case studies that.
we've seen one, I've seen one that was 4.5.
Yeah,
Certainly,
and that might be more up-to-date, realistic.
that's not, once you've run it at one, it's not that hard to run it again at another one. Yeah, so let me write that down. And we can, Robert and I are going to be talking more about what's going to go into the next report.
Diane, you're asking for a run it at 4.5 instead of 5.5?
Actually, 4.3 to 4.5, I think, is what I've seen on a couple of analyses for this rate.
How about 4.5? That'll tie with the lowest one I've seen.
Okay, we'll go with that.
No, I did see a 4 too. So,
You know,
You're not talking discount rate, you're talking about healthcare.
yeah, healthcare inflation.
Healthcare inflation.
Right.
so, but the discount rate, maybe we should look at that as well.
Right.
I mean, I think 6% is also percent.
Let me throw an idea out about that. You can contribute as much money as you want. There's no upper limit on the amount of money that you could put into the trust with PARS.
I think it depends on how much money we have in our.
Yeah, that would be the upper limit.
Right, that's the limit.
So you might want to contribute more money, but you don't have to. That's it. If you want to contribute more money than the 6% discount rate calculates out to, which this report is based on. Let's say you want to contribute as much as you'd come out with if you did a 5% discount rate instead of 6. Well, then leave the official discount rate at 6%. I'll calculate what it would be at a lower discount rate, what the higher contribution would be, and you fund at that level. The advantage of that is you build up flexibility in the accounting standards. So if something bad happens, heaven forbid,
You're not required.
something happens to the finances of the town, you can draw on that earlier extra money you put in. You're still as well off financially because you put in the higher amount.
Which you may be misleading the public as far as what the real liability is.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. I mean, that's what I've suggested to a few other people. That if you want to fund more, now you don't have to. I mean, hopefully, 6% is what the investment people would say is the expected return, given how you've invested the money or instructed PARs to invest the money. But there's a wide range around that. And there's nothing wrong with using a lower discount rate. We had one client recently that was using 7 and they said run it at 4%. And I don't know what they're gonna do yet, give them the money, you know. So a lot higher contribution requirements, but they're pretty flush right now.
Yeah, that all, I agree with Jerry, that all kind of works if the public doesn't question it. The public might question and say, why are you overpaying into this fund? Is this an extra perk for the employees, or why isn't it going into some other, like fixing the potholes on my street? I mean, those are political issues that,
Yeah.
aside from the county
Yeah.
issues, I mean,
That's right, if you
That's your
are funding more than the report says,
Sure.
why are you doing that? Yeah, that's true, that's the other side of the coin, I think.
City manager has a comment.
What if the town produced, you know, 2 findings, a conservative and an aggressive amount to contribute? But the report, you know, shows both outcomes, so it shows how much we can contribute, what's the minimum amount, what's a recommended maximum amount that you contribute, and then the council decides each year what to contribute within that banding of reports, that way the public knows what the reasonable
Based upon the
expectations
monies
might
that are
be.
available, we can
Right.
vote on that. And I think that makes much more sense. Because when you overpay, people are gonna question it. I would question it.
So probably 6% would be the upper end, and 4 or 5%, whatever, you folks would make that decision, would be the lower end. Yeah, we certainly can do that. It's probably a good idea for this situation.
Because that would be initially our goal too, because our ultimate goal is to make sure we pay down the liability. But one of our previous discussions was, okay, if we do have, okay, this is our minimum amount that we need to pay every year. If we do have extra funding available, reserves, can we pay more? And that would be the option as well.
And then we have the schedule to see how that will affect the overall
Right.
obligation.
Versus other priorities we have to look at too at the same time.
Exactly.
And
That
that
would have
was-
to be decided by council.
Right, and that was the key, was to kind of have the information, more of the assumptions to see what is the best case, worst case scenario, and what is it that we can contribute if we decided. If we have enough, and based on our other needs, can we pay more towards the
yeah, I'll say it's just me, this is a political issue. I do not think the public has an appetite for overfunding public employee pensions or benefits. I think that would be political suicide for someone to do that because the public does not support these things. So even discuss it, I think it's going off the table.
Well, I think on the other hand, there's a lot of the public that doesn't have a great deal of love for the unfunded nature of these obligations.
Oh, absolutely, Bob, I totally agree. I didn't say not to fund them, I said overfund them.
I also
We have
think-
to fund them, yeah, that's true.
I also think it's our responsibility as the committee and a town, the city manager and council to fully inform our residents about what our obligation is, what our unfunded liability is, because there has been in the past enormous numbers bandied about, you know, and, you know, when you're looking at what we've got here, based on the old census, it's not an enormous amount, that is ready to bankrupt us, especially when you amortize it over the 30-year period, with the GATS 45 requirements. That's just my controversial here. Anybody else feel that way, or do you think that this is an enormous burden to us?
Well, it's pretty substantial in terms of our total budget.
If we had to write the check today,
Yeah.
but when you're looking at it over a 30-year, and
I mean, when it gets out in 2021 to be over $1 million. Actually, there's another aspect. These are useful because these numbers do suggest or raise the question of whether this is sustainable for the town.
6% increase every year,
Yeah.
right?
So what do we think, what do we project our revenues are going to grow at for the next 10 years?
Well, right now that assumption is kind of a, you know, with what's happened and transpired the last year with you know, the, per se, the rebound of property taxes and the growth. Atherton was 9.03% compared to 3% growth for the rest of San Mateo County in net assessed value. So with that being said, I think with this fiscal year, we're starting to get that more of a capture, probably about, you know, I think about 4%. But going forward, I think what we're going to do, what we're doing is we're looking at what the historical last couple of years, kind of see that percentage growth, and then see where we're at currently, and then do a conservative approach to, I mean, I don't think it'll be 6% every year, as far as this this schedule goes.
I just calculated a few annual compound growth rates. So these numbers, I have here 8%, 6%, 4%, 5%. Where would one draw the line and say that's unsustainable? There's some of this is going to be unsustainable.
As far as the OPEB, the liabilities. And I think that goes back into all the different, our rates, what we decide. I mean, we can, you know, we already discussed one of them is assuming the healthcare rate at 7%. Maybe it's a lower increase every year. We can do so many different scenarios. We could say, okay, this is at 4%, but then we'll do the demographics too. Everybody works at the same place for 35 years, you know. It's just maybe picking up, okay, what are the assumptions that we're safe and conservative enough with, but not too conservative to where we're not ready for sudden changes in our own financial obligations.
So maybe we can have Doug go over this chart, the financial chart with the 6% rate, okay? And because there is that big town contribution that between 2012, 2015, $1,660,000, right? That I think, and then it goes down to 625, 660, and then on.
Right.
Am I reading that correctly?
We did this schedule at 3 different, you mean the 6% official one?
How about we
Yeah,
do
the main report,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Robert had asked us to do it at a couple different lower discounts also, but we'll use the 6% because that's the official one, at least for now. We're looking at table 2-4,
page 5.
2-4 on page 5. And I'm looking at a number kind of in the lower middle, what's called the annual OPEB cost item, which is about 2/3 down the schedule. It's in bold, annual OPEB cost. This year, 2012-13, the number is $663,930, and that is your actual accounting cost for this year. And then it drops down to 626 the following year, and then 650, goes back up to 650 the year after that. The reason it's higher this year than next year is you're playing some catch-up football, because you haven't done any funding until now, basically. So and I think the official plan was to start funding last year, but you didn't, which is okay. But that number is somewhat higher because it's to make up for the fact you're starting a year later than I think was the original plan. That might be a simplified explanation, but it gets you up to where you would have been, where we thought you were going to be basically. And so that's a little higher than trend, the number you're putting in for this year.
You're
It's
looking
taking-
at 2012, 2013, or 2013, 14?
2012-13 is the high year. That's
Right, and that was,
The one-
That
that's
was
the
partly-
1.2
partly to
million,
make up,
right.
partly to make up for the prior year.
right,
And then again, it drops down to 626,
right.
which is kind of your long-term trend number. And
Right.
then it just kind of goes up with medical inflation.
So just to respond, to respond to Mr. Tobin's comment about, $1 million a year in, can the town sustain it? That we're not looking at a contribution of $1 million per year.
Right.
If you look out over the 30 years, which would be the second page.
I'm looking at I guess it's an 8 or 9 year version of that schedule.
Yeah.
It comes up
In
to,
2020, this shows it going up to 824,000.
Yeah.
Year
so that's pretty
2020.
close to $1 million.
Robert, what's our plan this year as far as
Yeah.
Well, our plan is
That's in,
to fund the 1.29 million, which would catch up the previous year.
so that reduce the bottom of the liability then?
So 12-13, by the end of 12-13, we will have contributed the 1.6 million, because of that 1.6 million, 1.2 is what we were saying this is where we're starting, this is where we're gonna apply. The difference, which is like 320,000, is what we're contributing this year, so into this fiscal year. So that'll catch us up to having the 1.6 million contribution to the trustee account, and then going from 13-14, we're starting off, we're saying we're gonna contribute 626,000 that year towards it. So, if you look at the bottom of that, you see that 388,000, that's what we currently, that's our projection to pay right now as our retiree, what we currently have as retirees. So the 626 minus the 388 is, that difference is the current employees for the future.
Based upon the pre-reduction?
Yes.
pre-reduction, yeah.
Right, the benefits you're now paying out to current retirees counts as contributions. That's just like if you gave it to PARS and let PARS pay out the benefit.